April 14th Public Works meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Okay. Chairman Waggy,
Here.
Alderman Gould,
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Here.
Alderwoman Parker Tice. Here.
Great. Move on to the approval agenda. Any changes? If not, good by acclamation. Great. No announcements, proclamations. We'll move into citizen comments. Anybody from the audience or online is welcome to address the board. Nothing? Okay. We'll move on to reports of the committee chair and alderman. I just have one thing. If you look in board docs, and I just want to kind of, this is a temperature check thing for the board. So there's a picture of Google Maps. So, you know, in all the conversations we've been having about walking and safety, one thing that has been brought up is Garden Court. So that is a road that's off of Brentwood. That is, I believe, the only street that does not have a safe way to walk off of in any way. So currently, you know, especially the kids are basically having to cut through the gas station parking lot to get off that. And I've always thought it would not be possible to find a way to put a path on there, but after talking to the residents, they think there might be a path. Not saying there is. So I just wanted to gauge the committee's interest in authorizing staff to continue thinking about this or going to talk about it and see if there is a potential solution. It could be possibly, you know, a mulch path into the woods. I did walk around back there, so there's nothing that would prevent you from doing that if you could get an easement or something, or maybe even a path into Pine or Brentwood Place like we have from Bridgeport to White right now. So does anybody have an issue with staff pursuing that? Okay, great. That's all I had. Alderman Gould?
No report.
Steve?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the departments that were involved. For all that don't know, Jeff and I get complaints about the commercial fencing along behind the rec center and Walgreens. And over the years, we've tried to get the owners to fix up some of the fencing. Well, now I can honestly say from Walgreens all the way to behind the refine room, all that commercial fencing behind the rec center Eric put together has been replaced. The neighbors are all happy that, but the commercial areas that live on Anna Lee. And I'd just like to thank all the departments that were involved in that. So thank you.
Great, and I think kudos to you and Jeff for sticking with it for multiple years as well and asking about it. So, Nancy?
No report.
Okay, great. We'll move into city administrator report. First thing up is just some banners and signage.
With the groundbreaking of the GRG coming up, we wanted to do more deliberate marketing of city events, city programs. So Dan, Eric, Janet, Craig, and I have been meeting, and we are refreshing the Brentwood Bound banners. We will be putting up new ones along the Manchester Road corridor. And we got some feedback from the alderman, Jeff. We're also going to put an in-person rendering behind Arby's so that when you stand there and look into the park, you can identify where the lake will be, where the pavilion will be, different things like that. And then we have, go ahead.
Oh, streetlight banners.
Streetlight
if you
banners.
recall, we did the 10 ones that they're along Litzinger, you know, like near McGrath, and then they're also on the east side of town along Crossner. But those, Centennial, which was pre-pandemic 2019, so those.
That you all will be seeing those as you drive throughout the community.
Okay, do you need a motion to approve proceeding with this?
Jacobs.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
Jacobs, there's a
Jacobs.
change order.
Right.
Second.
All right, any other questions or discussion? I think it's a great thing. I think communicating what's going on in Brentwood Bound is, as everybody says, why is Manchester closed for 3 months is a good thing. So, all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. And then streetlights.
Oh, no.
Streetlight.
No,
Not yet.
that would be, what is that second one? Is it Evans Howard?
Sorry. I'm sorry, Evans
Okay,
Howard. I was in
very
the wrong
good.
section.
My computer is still
The
powering up.
monument.
Trying to get to the exciting part as fast as possible.
I'll talk really fast. Dan, so we met with Dan Fitzgerald, and he, we had additional questions that we needed answers to before we start amending the agreement to send back to site centers. For instance, was this competitively bid? Does it include the cost of construction, design and construction? What about landscape, maintenance, terms of the agreement? I think right now it's just 1 year. We want to propose something greater than that. And then I think the contract says that if Site Centers wants it dismantled, that it would be the city's responsibility to dismantle that. And we talked through that because that
Right,
would
we
be an
wanted
effort to save the
notification.
brick.
Well, and we wanted a notification right now. It's like, if they just, it's not, it doesn't make sense. They just call you, but you would need to give us written notice, give us X number of days, to find somebody to dismantle it and repurpose the brick.
So we got all our questions answered, but we will have to competitively bid this. We have one quote. We will get it refreshed since it's been maybe several months since they got it. But we're trying to expedite it so that by summer, we can at least start the construction. So that's just general update.
And no action needed from the
No
committee?
action needed.
Okay. Okay, moving to department reports. So Dan, you're up.
All right. I'll go through these fairly quickly. If you have any questions, just stop me. But one of the first things I put up here was Rosalie Avenue STP and the MSD sewer improvements. So I had met with Horner and Schifrin. We went through the closeout documents for MoDOT, signed off on those. Later on in the packet, there's a change order with Horner and Schifrin. Krupp provided all its affidavits, its lien waivers, all the project documentation, certified payrolls, all that's been sent to MoDOT. Skipping over to the MSD sewer work, as you see outside, they're still working here at City Hall and heading towards the post office and Starbucks. And that's still going on for at least the next 2 weeks or so. And then Litzinger Road at Helen, the concrete slab replacements, we actually poured the last of the slabs today. We'll let those cure over the next few days, and then Monday we should be able to pull the forms and open that road back up. So that'll be totally done. Then we can switch over to our sidewalks that we need to do for this year. Which brings me to the next one, the access ramp and curb cut at Lee Wynn. We put that on the back burner until we get these other 7 higher priority sidewalk projects done. It's not that we don't want to do this, it's just that we're, with just one concrete crew because we're supplementing sanitation with a couple drivers. We don't have all our drivers, so sanitation has to be done every day. And then Mary Kay Court's kind of in the same boat, except for Missouri American still needs to do those service line transfers. So whenever they're done, they still need to do the abandonment of the main, then they do restoration. Once they're totally restored, then we should be able to jump in there. I'm hoping that's sometime May, June. I don't know when. I didn't see them out there today, which I thought they would be. But I know that that's still ongoing. And in the stormwater report, we do have the report from Gonzalez. We've looked at it internally, just need to set up a meeting with them to go over. There's probably 6 or 7 priority areas and develop a ranking system. So like I said, there's 217 separate addresses that had concerns that were reported in or we reported. And of those, there's like 48 that are actually on city property. Most of them are private property issues, either downspouts, gutters, things of that nature that channel the water in areas you don't want it. And then last but not least, Route 100 Manchester road closures. That April 22nd closure that was scheduled for a couple Fridays from now, that's not going to happen. Whenever they do actually shut down the Black Creek Bridge, starting on May 2nd, then they can actually work that sewer project that was supposed to happen near Mary Avenue concurrently. So they'll phase it in. They won't need to do a full shutdown by Mary, and they'll also be working on the pedestrian underpass at that same time. And that's it.
Great. Any questions for Dan? Yeah, Jeff.
One is a comment and just appreciation. Thank you for jumping on that Litzinger and Helen slab replacement so quickly. I mean, I think it's great that that's being done. I know there were some other areas that there was giving me that some residents have provided some concerns, so I'm going to go back and make sure that I know where those are, and then I'll report back to you on that. The stormwater report, does that include, well, one, how much of an increase, we have 217, how much of an increase was that from where we started before we put the survey out? And then two, does this include our own, I'm assuming, Eric, and some of our other parkland areas, we've kind of assessed some of the water flooding areas and our holding
Yeah,
areas.
Gonzalez didn't do anything with the parks. None of that was reported, but this was all residential. There's a few commercial. I know I met with Gonzalez out at Brentwood Boulevard, like just between Anna and Pendleton. There was a property owner that has issues. It's actually in the Brazu Alley. So the water comes from the higher elevation at Brentwood and then sweeps down. And the alley does have an inlet, but it looks like it's in the wrong location horizontally, and it's really small. I mean, the pipe, if you look down in there, it looks like it's maybe 12-inch. So, but we didn't like address like the parks themselves, like, Brentwood Park, Memorial Park. That's outside the scope of this.
Okay, I didn't know, like, one of the areas along Mary Avenue that I had reported in front of a residential house actually does create a lot of erosion into,
And that one is in the report. I do remember that.
Rogers Parkway, and, so I just want to make sure that was not overlooked.
Yeah, we did give them a list to your first question. It was in the range of, from memory, like 50 to 60
That when we
troublesome
started,
spots. So to get to the 217, there were quite a few people that submitted different issues.
good.
Yancy?
So, could I ask a question about the trash truck drivers and the folks you're currently diverting? It came up at Ways and Means, and we were talking about for the salary study, but it's a long time to do the salary study. So what actions are you taking to try to fill those jobs?
We just don't get applications, and I think I know why, because if you look on Indeed or any of your search engines for employment, the private sector is also looking for those same drivers. So I know I looked at like Waste Connections, they offer a $5,000 signing bonus. Well, we don't have a signing bonus. So if the wages are the same and you can get a $5,000 bump just for working, I don't even know how many days it is, if it's 90, 180, but they'll get the bonus. And most of those CDL drivers that do it for the private sector, the wages are higher per hour. So if we're at, say, 22, they're at 24, and then if you get the signing bonus. And we've had people, and I know we've had like 3 start and then just disappear. You call them and they don't show up. But we have to pick up trash 5 days a week, so we take street people that have the CDL and that have driven the routes and put them out there. Ordinarily, we'd have 2 concrete crews, and we don't.
Right. Which I know, like, it works, and we have to pick up the trash, but this is concrete season, and there's other
It
stuff
is,
that your
yeah.
folks are doing, so are you, like, do you have people, or, like, is this just sort of gonna happen for the next few months, and we're only gonna have 1 concrete crew through the summer?
For the foreseeable, or the current time period, yes. We only have 1 unless, if anybody knows anyone out in TV land, that would like to work and drive a trash truck for us, I'd be more than happy to take your application. We had set up 6 interviews and only 1 person showed up. The other 5 were no call, no show. I'm like, well, why did you say you would show up and then don't show up, But I think that's just the sign of the times that we live in. I mean, people, I don't know, somebody's working, but it's not here. That's the problem we see.
Well, this seems to be a problem. I mean, this seems to be a problem. And is there something that we could do in the interim, whether, I don't know if it's here, I don't know if it's Ways and Means, but the fact that we have diverted people who are likely much higher salaries than the folks who are driving
Yes.
trash trucks, so we're effectively paying probably more to the current fill-in trash truck drivers than they are in the private sector. So do we have could we maybe work on a solution to this? Is this
Well,
just-
the temporary solution, which we always had that, was to offer them a higher salary.
Right.
So, but because they don't have all the skill set, you're not gonna start them at step 5, you start them maybe at step 2. So I know that Dan is working with Jason and looking, so city administrator, have the authority to offer new employees up to step 5. Anything greater has to come to the board. So we've talked about taking a critical eye toward the skill set and see whether we can justify bringing them in at 5. And then and so we're looking everywhere. But what we're also doing is what we talked about at Ways and Means. So that's the solution we're dealing with right now.
Steve, did you have a question?
Just an unrelated item, that when we were at Joyce Builders' grand opening, they're the ones that renovated the golf mall, it was brought to my attention that the sign for golf mall is still on Manchester Road in front of Bauman Meats. How do we get that taken down and given to the Historical
Yeah,
Society?
that would be the state that would take it down, since it's on state right away. I can notify the state that do they want to keep it? Is that what you're saying?
Give it to Historical Society.
Oh, Historical Society. Okay,
I'll go over there with a screwdriver if that's.
That was always my plan.
Right.
I have a Brentwood
Yeah.
shirt. Nobody's gonna.
yeah, because it
I'll
does
go
need to
late at
come
night
out.
and-
You know,
Look
they're
like
working
what
on the
you're doing.
south side, so I don't know when they'll work on the north side, but I know that
I think that's
sign's.
an easy solution. We can take care of that.
Yeah, then just.
Yeah, if they let us do it, I don't care. I can send somebody from Public Works, but traditionally, you know, we don't work on state property unless they let us.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeff?
Just a quick follow-up, and just a question on what Alderwoman Tice was bringing up. Do we have a relationship like we have with Gonzalez, where we could subcontract out in a time of need when we don't have staff to
Or-
Republic or
for-
somebody for trash pickup?
We asked that question before. They want a full RFP. They want to do it for like 5 years and then, you
Yeah,
know,
okay.
unless it's changed. I mean, that was when we
That
bid it
was
out
the response
before.
we got the last time, so no.
Yeah.
I don't think
Okay.
that kind of service exists.
Understood. All right.
So, I mean, as Ways and Means is talking about compensation as a way to solve that, is there something we can be doing at Public Works? Maybe it's probably longer term, but I know we've talked about getting the robot arm that picks up the cans and things like that. That would reduce the number of headcount necessary, maybe to help mitigate that. Is there something we should be thinking about at Public Works to solve this too?
Yeah, other than wages, I just know that it's hard to convince people that that's what they want to do, if that makes sense. Because, I mean, you're working in extreme heat, extreme cold, whenever it iced, they still did their route, even though the private sector just threw up their hands and didn't do it. You know, I mean, that's good. It's really good service. It's just, it's challenging to find someone that'll do that day in, day out for years. You know, we've-
Compensation is key,
Yeah.
and that's why we're looking at a solution that will actually attract and keep people here. Because if you look at some of the employees we've had in that division, they came from a private employer, but the city was able to offer them really great wages, which is why they stayed. And they do just an incredible work. So we're looking to reestablish that. So, and I think Public Works Committee has talked about a different type of trash truck. However, that cost is significantly higher than the one we just got the grant for. So we can always look at buying one that has an arm, but then that changes everything within the community, because then it's gonna be important that everybody have a cart rather than a trash bag.
Yeah, Steve?
Well, and this is the year that we turned to Ms. Higbee for our compensation study, correct? So I would guess, supply and demand-wise, these wages could be looking to go up. I mean, it's not a quick fix, but next year, I would think we were needing to adjust our scale
Yeah,
for,
we're adding, we talked to Ways and Means about that, so that's one thing we're looking at.
Yeah, and then just one more thing on the Litzinger concrete. I gotta say, I think it looks great, and I appreciate the team doing that. I mean, obviously, you have a lot of skill in concrete work, so that's good. And I think that's great to have that capability in-house, because I know we saved a lot of money
Oh, yeah.
doing it
And we did it
ourselves.
before the closure. The goal was to always get it done before this May 2nd closure, because even though I know you're not supposed to drive anywhere else but the detour path, I know residents will more than likely cut through those side streets, and we can't be trying to do that while they're doing that.
Yeah, I think that went great, so thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to Parks and Rec.
All right, so a lot of things happened in the last few days in Parks and Rec, so we'll try to get through this as quickly as possible again. So the first update was kind of the Brentwood Park internet connectivity. This was in the weekly report last week, and the idea of this is that we need to put fiber connection down in Brentwood Park to make sure that we have network capabilities and get the city back, getting connected back to the city network. It's the same network that is at City Hall, at Public Works, and at the garage. So it is $890 per month. Again, that's the same cost, so we'll be used to that, and we'll start budgeting that next year. We're going to have to find money for this year, And I know Alderman Tice asked maybe the reasons why for this year, and had asked IT because a lot of this, what they said, didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But the biggest issue is that Hoff, who's doing the work for the conduit, is doing that conduit work now. And we need to get ATT to pull the fiber and make sure everything works. If there's anything wrong with the conduit, and we've then signed off Hoff for completing that project, we don't have any recourse with Hoff because we accepted the project. That's the biggest reason. And then additionally, once we have that connectivity, and we'll have the cameras at the pavilion and the playground up, so we can actually start monitoring those cameras, especially as we get further and further along in the project. So those are the two big reasons why we want to start it this year. Then the small vehicle share program, that again, actually, we had a new update on that just today. So Bird Ride Inc. is the company who wants to bring in some mobile scooters throughout the 4 cities, Brentwood, Clayton, Richmond, Heights, and Maplewood. And so staff reviewed those applications. Application does fit the permit requirements that was approved by all 4 cities. Back in 2018 and then again in 20. So this is the first time we've had someone come in. So at this point, it looks like it's been approved, and staff will work with Bird on kind of a launch schedule and how that comes out. So it'll be interesting. It'll be our first one, and obviously all 4 cities will evaluate it and make sure it's a good fit. So capital, just a couple quick capital updates. We got the 1 bid out for the Brentwood Sports Complex sewer and creek bank repair. That will be coming back to Public Works hopefully next month for recommendation. And then next week we'll be putting out the Memorial Park Bridge Replacement Project, which will be coming to the June Public Works meeting for recommendation. One of the things that we discussed, which is basically Bull and I were talking about this one night, we were talking about Alderman Nguyen and his passing, and is there anything the city should do?
Recording stopped.
Perfect. No one wants to hear me. One of the things we talked about was a memorial tree, and that's a kind of a nice thing that the city could do. It's an easy
Recording in
fix.
progress.
We talked about Lee Wind Trail. That's not a great area for trees because it's right next to the creek bank. And obviously Brentwood Park will be a beautiful place, and we'll have plenty of trees that are getting planted, so we could select one of those trees off the path, which means we'll have no cost for the tree. And then the plaque cost will be $35. So we just want to make sure that the committee approves that.
Yeah, so you need a motion on that?
I think so.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the cost of a plaque for a memorial tree for former Alderman Nguyen in Brentwood Park.
Second.
Yeah, any questions? Great thing. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great.
Thank you. Next thing is Brentwood Days, and we've been talking about Brentwood Days, obviously, the last couple months, and one of the things that we always are a little bit unhappy with is those tents around the food places, and it just seems to be a hodgepodge of crud, to be completely honest. And it seems like the best tents that do, or the tents that do the best are honestly the craft stuff. We had a really nice craft fair at the rec center. We had 36 spots. We had 120 people who were interested. So we think the demand is there, and we want to see if we can just move that more to a craft fair. We still have maybe a row for sponsors. So if sponsors want to come out, like West Community and the library, I'm assuming, and people like that, we still have something for them, but really kind of teeter it more toward a craft fair. We'll have competition with Green Tree, but there's plenty of that. We've already kind of put out a feeler, and we have some hits already. So again, we just want to make sure that the committee was okay with that.
Yeah, anyone have an issue? Sounds good.
Great. The last one is the camera and door access systems for the pavilion and parking lot. And as we talk about stuff coming in, it's interesting that we need to talk about this too. But so when we started looking at the pavilion, we kind of took out the cameras and the door access and gave that to IT. The biggest reason is IT really wanted hold of that. They want to make sure that they got everything that was standard within the city and made sure everything was right, all the specs were right. And then talking with Navigate, we're like, well, that's not a bad idea because we'll save that 50% overhead and profit, which I think later is like $8,500, as you'll see. So we have that ready to go. IT's been going through all that work. The only small issue is that we can't bid it out. Well, we'd like to bid it out as a sole source. Pass Security is the company we typically use. They're local, they come in and do everything. They're also the only company that does both a Vigilon cameras and a Vigilon door access, which has become the IT standard for the department. So this will go to the board if it gets approved tonight, so it'll be on the board meeting on Monday. But the cost will be $53,000. Again, we'll save $8,000 by doing this in the total project cost.
Yeah, Steve?
Is this interlinked with the cameras that would be throughout the playground area and?
Yeah,
amphitheater
and again, I'm sorry, that's another good reason why we waited, because we weren't sure what was going on with that playground area. So we are talking about conduit runs there for cameras and pavilions. This is also going to include the run to the tunnel. So IT is doing a lot of heavy lifting right now. So, and thankfully they're the experts at doing it. So it's great that we have them on board doing this for us. So yeah, we'll be kind of incorporating all that. This is right now just for the pavilion and for the parking lot though. So we're still working on all the other stuff.
I think that's important for, let alone public safety, but for our liability as far as that playground goes.
Yeah.
Tunnel too. I'm glad to hear that.
Any other questions for Eric? I think you need a motion on the
do.
past security.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, any comments or questions? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great. One quick question, Eric, going back a little bit on the scooters. I know we spent a lot of time when we were talking about bike shares, and we laid in the permitting process of how that would work, but I vaguely remember that we said scooters would not be allowed at that time. Do we have a conflict with ordinances?
I do not believe so. I mean, I know when we talked about this, we knew that we were going to, the way of the world was going to scooters. So we actually changed it from an electric bike permit to a dockless vehicle, just to kind of encompass more for the way trends were going. I don't believe there's an issue, and I don't think there's, I don't want them running around park trails, but we'll monitor that as well.
Okay, might be worth some research for my personal.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want, I can research that a little bit more and bring it back too.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric.
Golf carts, that's a whole nother situation.
Low-speed vehicles. All right, Whitney, planning and development?
Nothing report.
Okay, we'll move on to item D, SUSCOM. Nice try. Get you up here eventually.
Good evening. Whoops. So at the previous meeting, we discussed options or how y'all wanted to proceed with the Green Dining Alliance. We did check with MyGov. However, staff feels that it would be more appropriate if we, instead of having it as a deduction of their business license, that we can offer a rebate after the fact, that they show evidence. Therefore, we don't get into confusing accounting. There are about 12 or 13 individual restaurants that are not chains. So it would depend on what the board would want to recommend. Like, I think Maplewood offered a $100 rebate. The fee is $250 for the first year and then $200 after that. So the economic impact would be based upon how y'all want to present this or go from there, so.
Great. Any questions for Whitney? Whitney, do you have a recommendation of what that rebate would be?
We haven't reviewed that yet, but I think the board was interested in doing a full rebate at the $250 and $200 a year.
Would that make it more complicated because it would be the first year is $250 and?
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to show proof of it, that they're still a member of the Green Dining Alliance and they've gotten their certificate in order to get that rebate. But I believe the last discussion was the board was interested in doing a full rebate for the entire cost.
Okay. Yeah, Jeff?
And when you say board, you mean the commission? The Sustainability Commission?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what board you're talking about. And then I think the last time we took this up, we asked if there was any outreach to some of our restaurants, our current restaurants, to see if there's interest? Have we done that yet?
No, I have not had the chance to do that
Okay.
yet. So.
Okay, so, yeah, Nancy.
So I've thought round and round about this, but I've sort of come down that I think that this is a positive thing in Brentwood. I mean, in Maplewood, I feel like there's this sort of culture of these restaurants, and as hopefully there's increased development along Manchester, would certainly rather have a bunch of smaller local restaurants than more chains, and any little thing we can do to help attract them, I'm certainly for.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have been researching this a lot last month, and so, you know, Maplewood was the first green dining district, so that's not what we're talking about here. This is kind of a first step towards that. But I've also learned that University City also has a green dining district, and Kirkwood is currently in the process of establishing one as well, and that's where it's a more cohesive composting and everything. I mean, I think this is something that would be good for the city. I certainly understand the arguments about it being symbolic. I mean, I view it as marketing, really, in some respects. And I think it's important we do this because it's going to at least send the message that this is the kind of restaurants we're looking for. Again, I hear it from residents all the time. We want restaurants like Maplewood. We want that in Brentwood. I think the risk of the cost here is if nobody does it, then it costs nothing. And I appreciate Whitney, you know, so what's the risk, right? I mean, I'm in favor of that. You know, whether it's 250 or 200, I think it's more what are we willing to do, you know, and show that this is something we're interested in doing in this town.
Well,
Yeah, Steve.
I kind of thought we were waiting on some feedback from those other non-chain restaurants, and I don't believe we've gotten that yet. Right?
Right.
Okay. So I really can't make a decision right now. I'd like to hear, you know, get some feedback from them.
I guess from my personal standpoint, I'm first of all surprised we have 12. I couldn't come up with 12 off the top of my head, but however many there are, they're either going to say they're interested or not, and I'm not sure from my personal whether that's going to inform my decision. This is about businesses that would be coming in the future, right?
Well, yeah, I'm worried. I don't want to put up anything. I don't know if this would be a roadblock for a restaurant coming in to the Brentwood bound area, but I certainly don't want to put up any type of a disincentive for maybe a non-chain restaurant coming in that doesn't want to participate in this, though. I think it should be voluntary if they'd want to do it or not.
Can you explain why this would be a roadblock?
Well, I thought you said district. You wanted to create a district down there.
Ultimately, but that's not what this is about, right? So I think this is a first step towards possibly doing that.
Well, once again, okay, as far as this subject matter, yeah, I don't really care if a restaurant wants to do it or not. I'm just worried about saying ahead of time, before we see what type of development we have going on down there. I don't want to put up any roadblocks as far as a district until we get some type of idea on what a master developer will want to be putting in down there.
And how is this a roadblock? A rebate on the green, if
No,
a restaurant?
once again, I'm just talking to the district. I'm not
Okay.
talking about this individual restaurant. So I'd be just saying ahead of time, considering a district down there, I would want to back off and see what type of development we're going to have down there.
Fair enough, but not germane to this specific
right,
item in front
right.
of us, right?
Yeah, I just
Fair
heard you
enough.
mention district, and I'm just throwing that out there.
Good,
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I'm open to, I like the idea of a rebate, you know, not just paying their dues for this. I mean, if Maplewood's 100, I don't know why we would say, okay, now we're going to do 250 or 200. I just think that why not just be parity to sort of get that going? So I would like to see some more investigation in that. I still would like to hear from some of our current restaurants and just say, you know, is there interest in this? I do know that, you know, Bola had raised maybe a concern that if there's a lot of them, then that does lower some of our income revenue from this. And so you know, if we start to get a lot of it, I just want to see the total impact of it. It's negligible, I'm sure. So, but on principle, we asked for staff to reach out. I just like to see that.
If I may interject, so what we're talking about is either $1,200 or $3,000. It's not a lot of money in comparison to the entire city budget. You can blink. So I think I'd use the word negligible.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, you raised it. I just want to make sure that we circle back on it and make sure that,
Right. So if we're not doing the business license route, I think it's a easier solution.
agree.
My thought.
Yeah, Nancy?
Didn't we put money in for sustainability initiatives this year? And this seems to completely fit within the sustainability budget, or no?
Not this year.
Oh,
That was
not
last
this year.
year.
That was last year. Oh, yeah. I thought there was. 10 or 20, that's what I thought. So this would easily fall in that, that bucket.
Came from that funding?
Yeah. So in some respect, there's money in the budget for it, if you look at it that way.
Sure.
So are we waiting to get more information? Do you want a motion? I can make a motion, but if you all want to wait for more information, I won't make a motion and we can.
I mean, I think the 1,200 or 3,000 is if this wildly, exceeds expectations, right? I don't think it will, because the $100 or $200 for a restaurant, they want to have to do Green Dining Alliance because they have to move away from styrofoam. I think I don't know how you calculate the savings to the city, but it's trash, right? It's about trash. Our poor mayor had to go pick up 300 bags of trash on the road the other day, and he probably wants, to do something else on his weekends. I'm sorry, and Alderman Sims and Alderman Plufka, so picked up trash. I mean, again, I don't know what answer we're gonna get. Again, the existing restaurants are either gonna be in favor or not. Is there a threshold that would allow you to support this or not?
I mean, I think the discussion of how much the rebate is I'd like to have the details on that. I mean, I think that it's, this is the first time I'm hearing Maplewoods was 100, and I think that seems like a good balance to giving them some value and promoting them to join it. I think some of the work that Dan has been doing with the composting initiatives, I mean, is there some cool, really great composting grant that we can do to start giving composting, things to those restaurants, so it's more than just Green Dining Alliance, but, maybe we can get some grants and some of the stuff that we're offering, we don't make them pay for those things, So it's a good idea. And it's a speculating idea because it's something that we don't have a problem with, or we have a problem because nobody's doing it. But it might be something that we see when Manchester Road's redeveloped and we have restaurants coming in, which could be, 3-4 years from now. So it's a speculative, just get it in place type of thing. So I agree that it's not a budget impact. It's just if we're going to put it in place, let's put some detail to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think timing is important to have it in place. Again, it's a very small thing, but let's have the framework in place so that as new development is coming, we have it in place. And again, I think this is for the future and the next restaurants, not so much the ones we existing have. And maybe some of the existing, we'll see it, and I mean, those are maybes, right? Yeah, Nancy.
Okay, so we've talked about this a lot. So how about we do it one more meeting, and could we ask Whitney to reach out to maybe not all 12 restaurants, but a handful of restaurants, see if there's any feedback. And then also if we could find out what the structure, confirm that it's $100 in Maplewood, and then sort of see what U City, Kirkwood, and maybe that's somebody on the Sustainability Commission who could do that instead of dumping more work on staff. And maybe we route it back through that way. But if we could find that information out, I think more information leads to better decisions, and we'll maybe stop talking about this one day.
Sounds good to me.
Second that.
I mean, just for awareness, I am prepared to take this directly to the alderman for our rights as an alderman. We've beat this to death here, honestly. I think it is symbolic. You know, we're not getting anywhere with it, honestly. Again, I'm not sure what that information is going to inform us.
Well, I mean, are you sure that Maplewood's $100? Like, and I'd be curious what Kirkwood and U City is. That to me is more important than whether the current restaurants are going to use
I'm
it.
not sure Maplewood's $100. I know Dan talked to someone with Maplewood. Was it $100?
He didn't know, he was gonna have to check. to see
Okay,
his
we had
actual-
heard it was $100. We can confirm that by any meeting.
We could always be the leader.
Yeah, we could also,
We don't necessarily need a copy, but Eric just confirmed for me that there's $20,000 in the legislative budget
That's
for
what I thought.
sustainability.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was out
And,
this year.
and I'd argue that we're not, that you're wrong in that we're not getting anywhere, right? We're getting somewhere in that there's some steps towards, that it does sound like we could, it could come potentially now that it's a rebate and not a percentage off their business license is good. If it could come from a sustainability budget that we already have established to fund those, that's good. Also, I would guess that budget would want to spend some money in promoting this, so there's details. If we just lay out the details, then I think you could probably get support for it. That's all. I mean, I just want to see more of the specifics of it.
Okay,
I agree, give it 30 days.
all righty. All right, thanks, Whitney.
It's always the little things that have, the little cost items that have the longest discussion.
All right, we'll move on to item 8A, the consent agenda. All we have is meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. All right, moving to old business. Street light receptacles.
Pretty exciting. This is fairly straightforward. If you recall from the previous meeting, we had KCI give us a price if we were to put in optional receptacles on the decorative streetlights over the entire length of the project, which would take you from Bremerton all the way to Hanley. And that particular price was $136,009.65, which was considered fairly high. We wanted to see what it would take to reduce it. So we looked at just the south side from Hanley to Brentwood, so that would only be 34 receptacles. And then that price drops down to $75,337.50. So you're losing 58 receptacles, but you're picking up $60,672. So the question is, do you want to pursue it with the optional receptacles on that south side, or tell them no and they just order them plain? And if you ever wanted to do it later, you'd have to pay the retrofit it.
Yeah, Steve?
I'd go ahead and make the motion that we go with the 34 receptacles.
Second.
Great, and Dan, just for clarification, so that's just on the south side, or is it like every other light on the south side?
It's every light on the south side over that length from Brentwood to Hanley. So if you ever had an event on that south side, or if parks, I don't know why they would need it, but if they did, you could get a ladder and plug into it and have a GFI receptacle up at the top, so.
That would be decorations, things like that too, right?
Correct, if you wanted to put decorations, if you just needed to plug something in for a special event, an inflatable, I don't know, something. It can't be anything too big because it'll trip the breaker, but these will have separate meters, and we're paying the cost of the electricity anyways. It's metered cost there, so.
Okay, yeah, Jeff?
And yeah, you asked my question about every other light, and presumably that doesn't lower the cost that much anymore, because there's already, I'm sure, the runs and stuff is probably.
Correct.
It looked like each receptacle was $450, so even if you cut that in half, it's not that much. Does this allow some receptacles, or if we wanted to go across Manchester with some lighting of some sort, is that possible with this? Or would we have to look at same amount of receptacles, but maybe we do every other light on both sides of Manchester?
Yeah, I would think we would just target just a handful on the north side. Like if you decorated the south side and wanted a handful on the north side, we would just, and you might be able to come from a side street for that matter, you know, instead of boring across or doing something across Manchester. I know it's pretty congested with utilities too, I would,
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, if you space them out like every other light, that's still, it's still functioning, right? So if we said, yes, we'll approve up to 34 receptacles, but we decided the placement of them later, is that doable? Meaning maybe every other light on south side and every other light on the north
I
side?
know the price proposal was actually for getting it, you know,
Straight
along
in a
all,
row.
a straight line,
Okay,
yeah, so the conduit run is the conduit run, so if you were to skip, you're still gonna run that run to get to the next light, so the length won't change essentially. You just won't do the terminations to the next light.
got it, okay.
So, but this does give you flexibility, and like I said, it would be more expensive to put in later if you changed your mind.
Yeah, and then there was there were some comments in here about the cost of this coming out of Public Works capital budget. Wouldn't this be part of Brentwood Bound EDST funding that could be used here?
Right.
If you needed to
Yes.
do that?
It
At
is.
the time this was written, we weren't sure like what some of the other contingencies were, so we just kind of threw that option out there, but there is enough contingency in
Yeah,
Brentwood Bound to cover
it will be
this.
Brentwood bound.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments? All right, we have a motion to accept this. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. All right, we're done with streetlights. Let's talk about streetlights.
More streetlights. These are the ones in York Village. If you recall, we paid TWM to do 5 easements in York Village. 2 of them were signed off on. Those are the ones at York Hills Drive. Those lights we were able to put up last year, you know, in 2021. And then we also had other locations that didn't go according to plan. So we developed the easements for those, and then the people didn't sign them. So we still have the lights at the shop. And these are 3 optional locations, but because we've expended our budget with TWM, this would be another change order for these 3 alternates. So the 3 alternates are 9 York Drive, 18 York Drive, and 54 York Drive. So if this is what you want to do and approve this, then we could go ahead and, you know, move
Nancy,
forward with this.
Go ahead.
Okay, so have these people agreed to it, and do they have any plans to move in the next few years until we get this done? Because
I was going to just, you know, send them some sort of diagram, just a sketch that shows it to see if there's interest, and then release the contractor to develop these 3. And I misspoke, it's like those were the ones that we were originally going to do. The alternates here, it talks about the alternate locations. It's actually 9 Middlesex, 70 York, and then that north side of Northcote at Sussex, which is actually MoDOT property.
so has MoDOT agreed to this?
They have, yeah,
Okay, so we know one works.
right,
And then
not
the-
just 2 more, really.
Okay, are there 2 more? And I'm looking over. Are we good on these? Yeah. Okay.
And this is for $4,800, so it's pretty close in line with what they charged us before.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the change order to the TWM contract after Dan confirms with these locations that they are willing to accept a light.
Second.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Dan. All right, so now we're moving into the reason most people are here, probably. So that's the continued discussion of Swim Club Lane. So we're going to try something a little different, and this could be a disaster, but we're going to try it. But basically, we're going to go into open committee, so we have maps out there. So we're going to suspend Robert's rules and just kind of workshop this. So residents are welcome to stand around with us. We should have all the stakeholders on this. And the plan here is basically kind of talk through the status quo, which is not using the egress, understand all the safety issues that we have and how those would be mitigated, and then talk about it with the egress and just make sure we totally understand all the pros and cons of both approaches. Are there other approaches that we can consider, and just kind of see if we can figure this out. All right? Great, here we go.
There's one right there. Thank you. You're what? Oh, okay, okay, okay. Sure, 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 sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what I propose is let's talk about the. So what I'm proposing is let's talk about the status quo, which would be we're not doing an egress, right? And understand the issues that we would have with that, with the traffic flows, the pedestrian traffic. Is that what that is right there?
Well, I mean, why is?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I don't know how we want to do this. If Dan, you want to start? I would say we start at Brentwood and just kind of walk along White and just talk about what's going to be happening. We have Luth here as well. We have the police chief and fire. So, and again, just kind of talk about the issues as we walk down White and how we're gonna mitigate them.
And the three exhibits here were developed in preparation of this meeting, but also because there were questions that were asked that were a little bit unclear from the last meeting. So this particular one, the question that was asked was if you were to allow this to happen, trucks would leave, go on swim club, how do they get out? So this red dotted line with the arrowhead indicates that they would go down swim club through that intersection with Rosalie, southbound Mary, turn, and then go westbound Eulalie out to the light at Brentwood Boulevard. So I don't know if there's any questions on that. Hopefully that's pretty clear.
Would we have to prevent parking on Mary so the big trucks can get? It's a very narrow road.
It depends, I don't believe so. I mean, it's gonna be a standard lane for any trucks. It'd be simple as your driving lane on the highway. So as long as we don't have anybody encroaching, it should be normal course of business at planned.
Okay.
We wouldn't have to have special no parking for anything unless it's an oversized load, but we don't plan on going that route anyway like that, so it would be normal.
And your estimate was 10 trucks a day, right?
And that's a very, very subjective thing.
Fair enough,
When we
right.
go to the beginning stages of this project, it's deeper, there's gonna be more removals of spoils and obviously more rock backfill, so more deliveries. And it should taper off once we get down, further down the road as the line starts to shallow up. So it'd be heavy initially, it would start to taper off towards the back end, so it would kind of be dependent on where we're at in this situation, if it's an excavation day or a tie-in to an existing line, things of that nature, but heavy at first, tapers off towards the later stages.
Yeah, Dave?
So I just had a question. So you had talked at the last meeting about the number of trucks and the types of trucks. The larger trucks, how hard of a negotiation of a turn from Mary Avenue onto Eulalie is that gonna be?
It would be standard to any of the smaller neighborhoods we work in. It's a tandem dump truck. Obviously, they're gonna have to navigate with care, and any basic turn like that, it's gonna be kind of normal course of business. If it were a larger trailer, yes, I would assume that would become sort of a problem with parking. You have to mark off certain spots just to make the swing radius, but given the majority of it's gonna be spoils and rock trucks, it should be standard course that if they can't get through a normal subdivision in any day, then it's gonna be a problem. We'd have to mitigate that time, but it should be normal course of business as we deal with every day.
That it's greater than 90 degrees, and that was my concern.
All right, so let's talk about if we didn't do the egress. So let's kind of start there. So why, what are the problems going to be? And like I said, let's start from Brentwood Boulevard and kind of walk down. If we didn't have the egress, we didn't have this here, what is this going to look like for the, 10 weeks that we're estimating this will take? Assume it's longer because of weather, but whatever. So, right, so you'll have, and I'll just hand it off to you, right?
No, it's fine. And the unfortunate part is if we do not have the egress, what we're gonna have to do is stage trucks in essentially a reverse manner backing up towards White. There is, when I kind of walked it myself, unless we put essentially an 80-foot diameter turnaround at the end of the street, there is no physical way to turn trucks around at that point without causing property damage, encroaching on other people's property, things of that nature. So what we would be forced to do is essentially coordinate and stage right here at the beginning of White and back up with any materials to be delivered from to site and removed from the site in a fairly rapid pace throughout the day, so we're talking possibly major congestion just due to the amount of trucks and the small amount of space we have.
And would they have to, so they're coming, up or down Brentwood Boulevard, would they turn around right here to back in? I mean, how do you see them actually getting backwards?
And
to
that's a
begin with?
really good question, depending on what time of day it is, whether there's cars in the parking spots, anything like that. It would be essentially an 8-point turn in the middle of the road and back up along White to get to the designated spot, depending on how far we're up the line.
And then it also, during school year, so this is the crossing where we have the crossing guard. So you've got a lot of kids that are walking in this area, as well as you have Bridgeport and Brentwood Place. So all the cars are, if you're taking a left on Brentwood Boulevard, all those cars come down that alley and go through this intersection so they can pick up that light as well in the morning, which you also said was probably when most of the trucks would be coming, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be throughout the day, but we'll start probably around the 7 to 8 time frame, depending on the activities. But it would be a pretty much nonstop presence throughout the day, and it would obviously be affected by school traffic and bus traffic.
And then we also have, that's also the morning is when Starbucks goes nuts. So you're going to have a bunch of cars coming through there. A lot of cars try and come in and do illegal U-turns to get into the drive-through. So I guess the question then to our professionals is, how would we mitigate that? Sorry, go ahead.
Since you have the mic. So just to be clear, those trucks that you're talking about, no matter what happens down there, they're gonna be doing all that anyway, right? Your bigger trucks are gonna be
They'll be
having
in the area.
to reverse down stage and all that.
If there is not an egress for them, yes, they will be forced to turn around
But
and back up.
but the last time you said you aren't gonna be taking, some of your trucks won't be going down White at all, no matter what, because when you deliver materials, they're bigger trucks and everything else, that they wouldn't, you'd have to stage them here anyway.
Correct. Equipment, things like that, once-offs, things that are going to happen once or twice a week possibly, if there's a special thing, but
So that's not a daily occurrence?
no.
Okay.
That would be major items like equipment, which most of it is on site already, so it shouldn't be a major thing. Pipe deliveries, which can be essentially taken care of with the truck and a rather small trailer, but some of the bigger pieces of equipment, no matter what, anything past the 35-foot threshold, we are going to have to turn around here either way. There's no way we're going to get essentially a tractor trailer down this egress path and try to swing around the corner here at Mary to Yulee. There's absolutely no way.
Right. And so, just to confirm, that traffic is not gonna be something that's gonna be ongoing throughout those type of trucks throughout this
It
construction?
will not be a daily occurrence, no.
Okay. And then, have you been on Mary Avenue there?
Yes.
Okay. I would call it more of an alleyway. I mean, it is a one-way street, especially with people parking. If you have ever tried to negotiate this intersection that has multi-directional crosswalks, and this incredibly awkward intersection, multi-directional crosswalks with our main pedestrian path. I mean, there are times when I've had to stop here, and even coming here tonight, there was somebody that was stopped in the middle and was looking around because they couldn't figure out which direction they were supposed to be going. And I had to wait till they figured it out to then actually get through that intersection. So I'm just saying, this route concerned me when I saw that was the route. I would have much rather seen Rosalie open and have it, get quicker access, but it doesn't sound like Rosalie's gonna be open either.
And that's what we're trying to work towards. This is our first path right now because we know it's open. We are unsure of construction at this point because we have not finished this. The restoration's not complete, therefore we don't have an open pathway. Once this does become open and we can get to a point where we can actually flow traffic through that way, we would divert traffic from Mary and Yulee back to Rosalie as a wider turn, more accessibility for trucks, and obviously just a simple entry point out to Brentwood. But for what we know right now, this is the best path we have.
So, two things now. So our biggest concern was the pedestrian path and potential of conflicts, especially if this extends into, toward the end of May and further. Now we're gonna take it next to one of our other parks that has a lot of kids that are kind of running around in, which I think is another challenge and another very difficult turn. I also would like to hear, especially during school, we've got a lot of traffic at Eulalie where people are going to drop their kids off, and that's right in front of the fire department. If we had a backup. We already have a backup of traffic at that light in the morning and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If we had a backup that and we had construction trucks blocking the fire department, I'm curious on if you have a concern with this route, Chief, seeing all of that kind of running and potentially causing congestion in front of the fire department.
So the traffic being backed up is headed west. We go in the opposing lane now. It's backed up on us on a regular basis now since Rosalie is closed. So we navigate that on a daily basis already. So it does not back up going east in front of the station. So we have that one lane to navigate. And I will say our equipment in emergency and non-emergency situations, we navigate Mary Avenue slowly next to the park. This turn is difficult, challenging at times, especially when vehicles are parked, but we successfully make that every time. So.
I just had a question about whether or not in the course of developing a plan with this, would there be any ability for your company to provide spotters at, you know, at the entrance here to Swim Club Lane where it goes across the walking path and then also down at that corner at Eulalie? Is that something you guys have built into what you're doing, or would that be an additional cost that you'd have to?
The entrance on the swim club would be standard practice. Anytime a truck enters a highway or roadway, anything like that, where essentially it's a blind corner for him, we will have spotters present on the site.
You're talking right here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That is basically built in. We know somebody's gonna have to be there watching them throughout the time, no matter what the situation. Down at Eulalie, that is different. It would be one of those things if we know we're gonna get into a situation where there's cars tight, kind of dependent on what the day brings, whether cars park close or far, we would possibly bring somebody down if the truck drivers express some concerns about a tight space, things where he's unsure of, and essentially, yes, we would have somebody follow down and make sure he can make the turn correctly without sideswiping somebody's car and taking off.
There's always two cars right here. Always, because they live right there.
Understood. No, and that's something we'll navigate throughout, and we've been in similar situations where it's rather tight, but as the chief was saying, it's just a go slow and be very careful, monotonous with what you're doing, because personal property damage doesn't look too well in the safety report for anybody.
So I want to kind of pull it back. So I'm bringing back my old lean facilitator previous life here a little bit. But like, again, let's go back to the status quo, right? What is the problem we're trying to solve here by doing this egress? Because that's not the status quo, right? So like, how would we mitigate, Chief, you know, the traffic issues and the pedestrian issues, and Ronnie as well? But, you know, because this seems like it's going to be very dangerous with trucks trying to back in, and it just seems like a mess, honestly.
Yeah, White and Brentwood is going to be a huge problem. I think the police department's going to have to be up there. I don't see another way, if that's the way this ends up. And that's not going to solve the problem. We're just going to be shuffling cars around. With Starbucks from 7 a.m. till 9 a.m., with these trucks trying to back down, we will physically have to shut that entire that area off to get those trucks out of there. I don't see another way to do it. It's kind of we don't have any problems with emergency response from the police department. We'll get in and out of White Avenue one way or another. So we're not like Ronnie's crews. That's not an issue for us. We do have concerns with Swim Club Lane, with the kids that are gonna be walking. Maybe there's some other additional measures we can take on Swim Club during these 10 weeks. And that's something we can discuss going forward, what makes that safer if we go this route. There's a lot of smart people standing here. We could probably come up with a couple ideas.
Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
You had mentioned that the majority of the trucks are going to be at the beginning of the construction. And my concerns are, you know, more after school lets out and the swim club opens. Would it be possible to have that route available prior to Memorial Day and then close it down at Memorial Day? Would that do you any good?
It helps at this point, but I mean, it's one of those things, unfortunately, we can't control the weather, so I would assume that, yeah, obviously anything at this point would help us move the progression along, but if it does come to that hard stop where we have to it'd be something we'd have to address. As I said, the truck frequency and intervals are going to get shallower and slower as we get further down the line, so depending on where that time break is, and if it's something that's going to be an absolute dead stop for us, That's something we can address at the time being. But the majority of the heavy loading, heavy lifting, if per se, is gonna be at the beginning of the street over the next 6 to 8 weeks, give or take. And so that's something that if we have to address, and that's the committee and the board thinks is gonna be an absolute necessary, we will look into it. And we will deal with the situation we were given. It's tight, it's bad, it's just unfortunate, but we have to get it done.
For the residents that are here, I think if I was living in the area, my primary, what's the time frame here? If you open this up, how quickly do you get it done? If you don't have egress, how much longer do these folks gotta live with this, so to speak? And it's not on you guys, you're just doing your job, we get that.
From what we're looking at, and just the amount of coordination and congestion at that area, we can estimate between 3 and 4 weeks of schedule cutoff if we do get a single point of, or a secondary point of egress around on Swimcom Lane, just to keep the interval of trucks moving, spoils out, materials in, just that machine moving faster and faster and faster throughout the street, instead of stopping, turn around, wait for the next guy, stop, turn around. I mean, yeah, we could see a pretty significant schedule reduction, and that's why it's been brought up on our side, because it thinks it's something that's gonna be beneficial to hopefully get out of everyone's hair as soon as possible.
Are you talking weeks, days, or what's the difference?
Weeks.
Sounds like 4 weeks possibly, you said.
Very possibly, given the congestion we're seeing already, which is the bore pit reception at the end of White, any way where we can keep the flow of traffic, the flow of materials going in a consistent pattern is just gonna keep production numbers that much higher.
Yeah, please.
I got my calendar. So kids get out of school on the, help me Megan, 26th, 27th of May. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to go. When, I'm just doing the math. When do we start? When does the pool open? I know that number real well. So when would this start?
If we had approval by, I guess we'd have to wait till Monday of next week, we would be basically doing this that Tuesday. We would be putting the access in, getting everything prepped, so once we start moving down the line of White, it's ready to go, there's no waiting, it's ready to get things into full swing per se.
All right, now you're gonna get tortured by the lawyer who's on circuit. So here, what does the connection look like? Like, what, is it just a jillion tons of aggregate?
No, so what it is if you've seen the contours, I'm sure you have, it's kind of a slope thing. What we would do is cut a path in along the property, I believe it's 8969 here
And
on
along
the
this
path.
fence line?
Yes, so basically we would remove the fence right here along the backside and put a temporary fence for the dog that's needed there. We would widen this here to cut in and create a larger path, probably 13 to 15 feet depending on what we can get, and essentially slope it back into the road so it has as smooth as transition as possible. We will have to remove 2 trees. We've kind of already addressed that with the property owner in the city. But basically what we do is cut as much of it out as we can without disturbing any major parts of the yard and create a nice smooth path in so it's an easy transition. It's not a steep downhill. It doesn't have any severe grades, anything like that. So the trucks moving through will be as smooth and slow as possible as they transition on a swim club. Basically, we'd cut everything out with various pieces of dirt equipment. We would pack in some sort of aggregate, and there would be hot patch asphalt, so that way it doesn't slope off. No cold patch, I'm sure you've seen it, where it meshes up. Yes, and then once it's done, we will cut everything back, and we'll basically place it as new as it was. Have a new path, put the fence back.
That resident will get a new driveway, we repair the fence, basically return it back, and I mean, that's,
Put the curb back.
it's not worth the calculation, but that is a nice benefit for the city that we would get because that path needs to be replaced at some point anyway, so, but again, I don't think that's entering into the calculus on this at all, it's just kind of a bonus.
Is there enough room to do a turnaround that would work here?
Unfortunately, no. From what and there's no easy way to look at it depending on the size of the trucks. If you go up to Bridgeport, you see essentially it's an 80-foot wide turnaround. And there is a big cluster of trees and rockways right here and a lot of stairs. And from where I calculate, I would essentially be putting a circle in this guy's front door. And that is the only way we can see a truck to do a full turnaround, and I don't believe the property owner is gonna be too keen on that idea.
Right. So Chief, it sounds like going back to like the Starbucks alleyway there, I mean, one possible mitigation, if we're not allowing the egress, is probably to post somebody there that would just be directing traffic and running after kids and doing whatever, right?
We can, but I can tell you that our day watch is busy, and that's a challenge for us, and it's probably a 2-officer job. Somebody's gonna have to get the light at Brentwood and Manchester, or Brentwood and White, and someone's gonna have to be a little bit east of there along the alley in order to clear that and to get the trucks out. We don't staff enough policemen to do that every day for 10, 12 weeks.
Well, it'll only be 6.
Yeah, Dave.
Actually, Jeff brought
Sometimes
this point
I've
up.
seen construction. No offense.
I wish it was that easy.
Jeff brought this point up, and I think it's a good one. May 5th, where we dropped the bridge on Manchester Road, which is gonna invariably, I think, increase traffic on Eulalie and Rosalie coming east towards Brentwood Boulevard, just for lack of nothing else. And so it seems to me that if we're even gonna consider something like this, it seems to me that instead of it being we're gonna do it as we need to do it, it seems to me there needs to be some dedicated people at Eulalie and at Mary Avenue, because there's gonna be increased traffic there. There's gonna be, within 3 weeks from today, there's gonna be increased traffic there. And it seems to me, as confusing as you say, as confusing as that interchange is at Eulalie and Mary as it extends down to Dorothy, boy, it makes me nervous that this seems far safer to do it this way, but it seems like we've sort of we've sort of spread the concern out to other areas, and
Would it make more sense to take the trucks east to Hanley because of what you're describing?
yeah, I don't know.
What is the timeline on this chunk of Rosalie that is the Harris's private street? What is that supposed to?
So right now, the big obstacle we're dealing with is we basically have an underground tunnel from right here at Rosalie that pushes back up to White. They're finalizing threading the pipe with the tunnel with pipe right now and setting the manholes. Once that is done, we're hoping to look forward to close the open excavation up on Rosalie and get that at least somewhat accessible for the surrounding residents. Our main priority is to put crews here on White and to move up to Bridgeport, because essentially we're gonna build it as it flows down. This will unfortunately be the last point of our excavation for basically the last tie-in connection. Ultimately, everything flows back down here into the existing lines right by City Hall. So,
Okay, well, here's another concern, that on May 28th, when the swim season opens, the main way that people, at least from west of Brentwood, get here is, in fact, Rosalie. So, if Rosalie's unavailable or it's still semi-private for the Harrises, then are they gonna be coming, or where are our members from the west? How do they get here?
well, Rosalie will have to be opened up to traffic, through traffic. We will just temp asphalt the spot that is open now, that I'm sure everyone's seen. And so it is accessible through Rosalie, but it will not be until we start excavation here.
So if you're doing that, then, I mean, if this is the last one to excavate, then couldn't you, in theory, as you start this, let's open that back up and then get all the work done and not try to route all the trucks to
Of
Eulalie and make that quick turn and get them, because this is a much wider street. And then once all that's done and Rosalie is back open,
Of course.
then you can, once you do your work on Bridgeport, White, and then, eventually back down on Rosalie, you just finish the project. It just seems like taking them to Eulalie, I agree with Alderman Plufka, that opened up a whole nother spread of problems. And I always try to think about how do we contain the problem, not cause it to impact more people. And I get the folks on White, they're gonna be inconvenienced, whether it's 3 weeks earlier or 3 weeks later. They're gonna be inconvenienced this entire time. It's not good. But the work has to be done. I just don't like the idea of now, just to save maybe a few weeks, we start spreading and creating more problems around the neighborhood. Unless we can figure out how to do it quickly and go to Rosalie, that.
Okay, well, so I am in Ward 1, so when we used to belong to the pool when our boys were younger, we came across Eulalie, because I came at Litzinger. Occasionally, we go at Rosalie, we always came Eulalie in this way. But the bigger issue to me is my children would bike here to the light, and they'd wait, and then they would bike down White Avenue, go through the cut through and get here. So that construction on White is really gonna impact the people on the west side of Brentwood trying to get to the pool on foot or on bike, because that's the logical way to get there. So I don't know what the right answer is, but that's another thing to think about for the people on the,
That whole neighborhood, we have a walkway right here, so anybody
So-
who's on foot from that whole neighborhood is, anybody from these several blocks is walking down Bridgeport down here and then walking through that as well.
So is there any access, so this is a road, pretend there's a road. There's a road here, you've cut it in, it's gonna be there for however many weeks. Is there still a pathway to get these kids from wherever they're coming, Bridgeport, Garden, all the way up here, Mobile, where they live? Is there a way to get them down this too? Because pedestrian access right here is pretty important.
And that's it's a difficult question because we're not going to have trucks on it 24/7. So I'm assuming people are just going to simply ignore traffic signs. We see it every day and say, "Oop, there's a walkway, there's a pathway. I'm going to walk down it." But it doesn't alleviate the fact that we are going to have people watching the trucks. So they're not just going to send somebody down the way if there's a child or two or three, whatever the case may be, on the road. It's going to be clear of pedestrians, clear of traffic before anyone drives down there. So it's really not going to change the situation. I'm going to basically just go to the fact of guys are going to choose whatever you want to see on here. We're just kind of trying to make it easy for everybody. If it's something we need to keep open to pedestrian, we will. Is it going to cause a hassle? Not necessarily. We see it every day in worse situations where people just refuse to listen to street signs, refuse to see barricades, things of that nature. So I would say that would probably be a valid concern and valid path for them to go down at the same time. So I'm just going to
No extra vehicle traffic, no residential vehicle.
And that's one that we're not really opposed to either. I mean, the problem is, this is gonna be a heavy congested area, so you're essentially trapping a large amount of people on White, and that was one of the original concerns and kind of the original, I guess we're gonna say, benefits of it, was to give people who were on White a simple egress route out when you know it's heavy construction, whatever time of the day that is. But the big thing we've gone to is that we were going to close it after construction hours because we don't, somebody coming up or somebody coming down, things of that nature. And so, dusk hours are usually the most dangerous for traffic in any sense. So that was where we stood, and kind of just defer to whatever decisions you folks make, because we're just trying to make it as easy for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the resident I've talked to, lives here, and, they were open. There's one thing if they're inconvenienced, but it was more the concern of, can we not get a fire truck back there at all? Even if it just adds a couple, 4 or 5 minutes, right? I mean, that's a concern. So it's not the inconvenience, I mean, it's the fundamental safety. And Ronnie, I think you were of the opinion that, if we had this way, you would be able to get there as quickly, you would know what to need to do.
I'm just gonna throw it out there, 150 kids are gonna be coming up and down this sidewalk now, because this is all woods and janky. Doesn't have a sidewalk, and we're gonna have trucks on what was the sidewalk. Cars, bikes, not golf carts. Lots of other on foot. Main way in is here, not the traditional path in, because the Harrises have closed the road. So there's a lot of confusion created.
we almost need to do like a matrix or something and write down pros and cons and really.
Just a lot of moving pieces. So my question on timing, it would be this, so.
I don't mean to be a stickler. I think it's really important that people online hear you.
So council is gonna vote one way or the other on something on the 18th, and then you guys are gonna either get what you want or you're gonna live without it. So 18th happens next Monday. It's 10 weeks or 12, I know you can't control the weather, God's in charge, but 10 or 12 weeks, and you could shave 4 off of that.
3 to 4, depending, yes.
So I just look at the 6 weeks of school that's left, and the 6 week, and then that's the 4 busiest weeks of our swim season are the first 4 weeks.
So if we don't allow this egress, I mean, do you agree, Ronnie, that there is a probability or a possibility that we would not be able to get emergency services back there? I mean, is that a concern you have?
I had a resident called City Hall Friday. There was a load of rock that was blocking. Our ambulance would have gotten through with damage to the ambulance. Our fire truck would not have gotten through. And that just happened. So that is my concern, to keep the flow open.
Could I ask the swim club, is there a way to, at least the time during the construction, to bring the vehicular traffic to the swim club through the back way? In other words, message to your folks, try and stay off a swim club in a car. You're gonna get your bikes and your kids. You're gonna get that. Can you come in through the backside? I mean, would it help at all, I guess is the question.
Where would they park? So I'm not gonna bring a car down. Am I gonna bring them across the magic bridge that nobody should ever cross? I mean, that's my question, is what's the back way mean?
Yeah, from the east. You can get to the swim club back through
This white dead ends here, and here's Swim Club Lane. I mean, you don't.
no access down,
No,
I thought
that's
doesn't it connect to
sidewalk.
the, that's a sidewalk, okay. I was thinking you could get to it from the,
No, I mean, if it looped around and we could come in above it, because it would be
Right.
above it here, that would
Right.
work, but it
I
doesn't.
thought through the industrial park there was a loop there, there's not, okay.
No. Yeah, I mean, there's a walkway here. I mean, so I think all the kids that are walking up, you know, we will tell them to take White up and do this, so you would kind of miss it if they're walking. So that does mitigate it a little bit either way.
So a question was asked about where do people park. Isn't there access by parking at Memorial Park and then just taking the trail and connect? So that they're not gonna do that?
People live over here and drive golf carts.
So, I mean, I'm encouraged that two things here that we talked about that I think potentially are encouraging to me. One, I do hear you, Ronnie. I think public safety for the residents on White is paramount. You know, that would be tragic if something like that happened. I do like the idea of seeing if we can coordinate and try to redirect the trucks on Rose Lee to Brentwood. I think that helps mitigate the problems I have with it going to Eulalie at that intersection with school traffic and fire department right there. I'm a little uncomfortable with having trucks and all that. I know you think it might not be a problem. But I really don't like Mary Avenue and that really, 120-degree turn. I just think you're gonna have an issue all along. So if you can open that up, and as far as having residents on White being accessed, would your spotters then pull the barricades and let residents go through? And then would they be spotting for residents as well?
More than likely, no. It would be open to traffic. We would have signage. It was shown on one of these, essentially exit only, trucks entering, things of that
I think that's the
nature.
biggest concern that I have, is having it just wide open during your construction that allows, no matter what, anybody to decide that they're frustrated because they can't get through, so they're gonna speed through that access without looking.
It would be no different than a do not enter sign on a one-way roadway. That's where we're at.
Yeah, that's
And I
good.
understand what your concerns are, but from unfortunately what we've seen people are gonna do, sometimes what they want, but all we can do is provide as much signage as we can, as much warning as we can to let them know the possible dangers.
Yeah, and you're confident that if we open this up, you could conclude the work, within reason. That obviously we don't know what weather does to us, right? But you think best laid plans is you could conclude the work before swim season starts, before Memorial Day.
It would be close. It's going to give us a substantial head start, which is the big thing.
So even if we decided, okay, as we're getting closer and we look at it and we say, all right, we're gonna shut that down, you could then finish
It would be,
the
we would have
job.
to just be given the card we were dealt, basically. We
Okay.
understand that this is kind of
Right.
a favor, if you will, by the city, so we will deal with the situation we've been given.
To your point, on a previous MSD project in town, they did have hard dates to shut down and open the road for Brentwood Days 2 years in a row, and the contractor complied. I mean, this is the date, they closed it and moved on.
And I assume even, we would have the option, if we did allow them to have this egress, pool opens, they're not done, let's say we get 3 weeks, and it's not working out, then I guess we shut it down, right? I mean, we would have that opportunity to do that. So Ronnie, back to, if we don't allow the egress, what mitigations would we do to ensure that there isn't again, that situation has happened at least twice that I'm aware of, where residents couldn't get out, ambulance can't get in. What would we do to mitigate that if we don't allow this?
I think we're just gonna have to be on site every day. Our fire marshal starts in just over a week, and him or myself will have to be there every day to ensure. I don't know what else to do.
Who's input from those who are most affected, the white residents along this strip? Does anyone? Nothing, okay.
Well, I've talked to a couple residents. I mean, I know we reached out to the owner of this house, and more importantly, the person who lives in the house. It's a renter, and made sure their concerns were addressed, and I've talked to the Mockles there.
I got some correspondence that people on White were in favor of it. I think if you lived on White, you would be supportive of the egress, so so that.
Could I just see if I heard both chiefs right? So if we don't open this up, you're gonna have to station 2 police officers here.
There'd be
A good chance.
that we're gonna have to do something.
Something. And you would have to pretty much have the fire marshal all day long knowing where stuff is. Regularly. But regularly. So that's a different it's another twist to this situation.
And along those lines, does county get involved since they have got Brentwood Boulevard in any of this decision-making?
Hope not. We won't start until December or so.
I mean, this is primarily a city street, so I'm not sure why.
The sewer works more here.
Oh, I just did, if we're,
Talking about staging,
Or turning to hear.
Right.
That you will hear from them.
yeah.
And people will come to City Hall to complain like they've always done, or call the police
Public Works.
department, so.
We get regular complaints on Starbucks.
Don't catch that one,
anyway,
they'll be here.
Heard that story at the board meetings, that Starbucks is a problem, but.
I think the people that won't be able to get their coffee are gonna be more angry than the people on White.
That's true. Imagine what that line's.
You should open a coffee shop.
Concern in the neighborhood meeting with MSD.
It's pretty loud there.
I mean, from my personal view, I'm not hearing a good mitigation on the safety of these residents. I mean, that is really my concern. And I mean, you haven't really started construction heavily, and we've already had 2 instances of that. And yeah, I know we sent people out and got it resolved quickly, but you can't have your fire marshal there all the time, and there's just that possibility that in that 15-minute period, that's the critical time.
So I'll say this, if you all decide on the 18th, and I think these people being able to have an ambulance is probably the most important thing, or have their fire put out. If this is done somewhere, if we can have an understanding that, hey, on May the 27th, this is being no longer, we have a hard date, like no matter where you got, no matter what the weather was, that mitigates a lot of my concerns about this connection and everybody that's going to be using this starting on the Saturday of Memorial Day, especially with the unknowns of, is Rosalie going to be open again? Do we want, how is the swim club traffic going to flow through Eulalie or back through this end of Rosalie and back around? Because there's other ways to get here, but I think if you have a hard date here, put the egress in so you can get a fire truck in. And if you can also limit it, or at least attempt to limit it to your vehicles and those who live on White coming out for egress, you eliminate a lot of other concerns.
You have another advantage too, because your truck traffic's coming down as the project goes, correct? Correct. So you're gonna have less trucks by the end of this.
That's right.
I mean, I kind of land, I think, at the same place that Matt did. I was really concerned, that's why I'm here. Just, I think where I'm landing as a resident, it's probably a better idea to put it in and try to get it done fast.
Well, and that is a big kind of linchpin point at this, is that once we get this done, which should be in the next week or week and a half to 2 weeks, we will open Rosalie back up for traffic. We're not going to be on here until these 2 stages are done. We will have it rocked in. We'll have temp asphalt. It will be drivable to all sides of traffic both ways. So we will, I can plan a route out with truck drivers. No harm, hopefully, to anybody, but well, we can plan it out. But sometimes it doesn't exactly go. They will take the path of least resistance, the easiest, and this is guaranteed the path of least resistance.
They'll look at Mary and go, that's a lot of resistance.
You'd be surprised sometimes. But no, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be slow, and we'll portray that to everyone if it does get passed. But once Rosalie is ready to be reopened, it will be reopened as soon as humanly possible, just to make sure the flow is that much easier and we cut this loop out, this tight loop at Mary and Eulalie. That's.
Are you going to need that temporary speed table removed?
On Rosalie.
That temporary speed table that we have on Rosalie, because that's just going to get torn up by gravel trucks.
It's just bolted.
Oh, okay.
You know, just speed cushion.
We'll look into it. We've dealt with similar situations before, and that's something we think is just going to get destroyed or cause more issues. Then yeah, we may have it removed temporarily.
That's an issue. If once Manchester Road gets shut down, then not having speed table would be an issue. And that's,
Yeah, and I would encourage us to stay closer on the immediate concern. But I mean, so if we allowed it, we would still shut it down outside of work hours for residents or not for anybody. We would put the big barricade so it would not be drivable even if you try. And I assume, what I'm hearing is, you know, we do this, shoot to have it basically done by the 28th or 27th, whatever, and you know, we have an opportunity to revisit it, that you wouldn't be working Memorial Day weekend anyway, I would doubt, right? So we'd have it totally shut down for that first weekend, which is probably the highest foot traffic. I mean, yeah, the sidewalk would be messed up, but they would still be able to walk over it.
No, it would just be a simple transition. We'll transition it into the road, and then we'll work with you guys on whatever you need. If it's a temporary thing, we need to cut out the transition for the time being. A day saved is $1 saved for us at this point, so we'll work with you on whatever we need. It's just, we want to try to get this thing moving as quickly as possible, and this is the best way we can see it happening.
I appreciate that. And I think if we have a firm, like, not the flexibility that Alderman Wege was saying there, and I get construction happens, but once the 28th hits, it doesn't matter where you guys are. This traffic quintuples, jajillions, because of swim practice that starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's, I mean, this here, have at it until the 28th, and then back down the street.
But we would still have the issue of having to repair it back. Even if they get it done by the 28th, then there's going to be construction there to put it back, right? But that would be happening during swim season.
Oh, no, you would be repair it. It would essentially shut down.
Temporary at the end. I'm just talking about eliminating the flow.
Okay, have we group thinked into a solution here? We will when we exit open committee or whatever we're in, so. All right, any other comments, questions? Oh, yeah, thank you.
So are we back to the original resolution then that we discussed it? Changes in the agreement between us and the contractor?
Like the firm date, the
Yeah,
28th,
yeah.
that has to be put in there.
Spotters, Rosalie,
Okay.
as soon as possible, you know, all of that.
So we can
All right.
articulate those when we go back of what those are.
Right.
And that's what we take to the board on Monday.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. See you all back at the dais.
That one actually cut out for a second. I'm going to switch it with this one.
Okay, we resume back. So I think, I guess if somebody wants to start articulating kind of what we just talked about, good luck. Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
I'll give it a go. I move that we authorize the temporary road at the end of White, dead end of White, for a period of time up until May 27th. Is that correct? And the addition of spotters at Mary Avenue and Eulalie, as well as the egress onto Swim Club Lane, and redirect traffic down Rosalie as soon as possible.
And those spotters would be just for construction trucks,
Correct.
correct? So basically the spotter would just need to walk along, so we'd get them out on the Swim Club Lane, they could walk down the Rosalie, get them through that intersection, walk down. And then we would allow, I think the original resolution allowed residents to do that, and we would close it in non-work hours, put the barricades up, just to make sure we,
And I don't know that it needs to be mentioned, but public safety has access to that road no matter what,
right.
in order for safety of residents on White.
I can't think of anything we're missing. It's a great thing about public service, you can always change.
Yeah, and I would
You can always
keep
be
that
wrong.
language back in
Yeah,
the,
keep that.
that language that was originally in there about up until, or to our own discretion or whatever.
Okay, well articulated.
Sure, it's a long one.
That means it's good.
I'm terrible at these.
Anybody want to second that?
He already did.
Okay, all right, and so, and what'll happen here is, just for my own edification, so we'll revise the ordinance that is going to the board on Monday with this recommendation.
Right. It might be this weekend that gets in there,
Yeah, that's all right.
so, but it'll be in there by Monday.
Okay, all right, any other comments, questions? Appreciate everybody's flexibility. All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Good job, everybody. All right, we got one more little thing. Dan bolted on the end there.
This one seems too easy now.
Don't worry, we'll drive it into the ground.
This is for Rosalie Avenue, the STP project, as I mentioned in the departmental report. So Horner and Schifrin spent more time doing some construction services. So I kind of gave you a breakdown, those 52 additional hours that they needed. So there was coordination of shifting a street light that was different than the plans at this particular address, 8730 Rosalie. They did additional inspection and coordination on their sidewalks around 2 obsolete stormwater inlets. So whenever they remove the top, they're actually stone. I've never seen them. I've seen brick, but I've not seen quarried stone. So at these 2 addresses, so they had to reconfigure the sidewalks at 8744 and 8710 Rosalie. And then lastly was just coordination with MoDOT because I know we've mentioned it before, but Krupp Construction went out of business at the end of last year. So it was a little more coordination on their end to try to get pay applications and things of that nature, and then all the other paperwork. So what they're asking for is a total of $5,051.28, which would increase the total construction phase to $40,010.33. And we're still under the original budget that was planned for this project. And then just to let you know, it's also reimbursable with the STP, so we would get 80% of that back after we pay it, then we would submit the paperwork to MoDOT. So pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion that we accept the supplemental agreement with Horner and Schifrin as outlined in the memo of April the 14th.
Second.
Great. Any comments or questions? Can we make a contingent on them strong-arming Ameren to turn on the lights? It's a joke. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay? Great. We'll move to section 11, citizen comments. This is your second chance to provide comments. Okay, seeing no further business,
I do have one, since we have Luth with us here, Representative. We don't have anything planned like this for Brentwood Place at all, do we? Because that would be, an egress the back of Brentwood Place would not be even an option, so.
You can drive through the woods.
Drive through the woods. Yeah, so I just, hope we never have to take that up.
Yeah, I've been watching these plans come through because they did my street very closely, and I know Brentwood Place is not in there. This is the monster, so. All right, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.